Good morning. Welcome to this cozy space on a wet, gray New England summer day. We're going to open this morning with opening words from Katie Romano Griffin. Come, let us enter this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship. Our opening hymn this morning is number 187 in the gray hymnal. It sounds along the ages.
Good morning, and welcome everyone to First Parish in Milton. My name is Elise Henricks, and I am the worship associate today for Tony Dutzik, whom I'm slightly familiar with, the lay leader of today's service. The theme of today's service is, what can the Bible tell us as 21st century UUs? A special welcome to Tim Steele, who's our accompanist, and Nina Trog, who is our audio person. If anyone's here for the first time, a very warm welcome. As we say here at First Parish, however your journey, whatever your heritage, and whomever you love, you are welcome here. There's some information in your pew about First Parish, and after the service, any of us would be more than happy to chat with you. Is anybody having any trouble hearing? Can you put it up a little bit, Nina? Thank you. Is that better, Tom? Can you hear a little better? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. And if you're on Zoom, please let us know in the chat function if you're having any trouble hearing. Worship can take place both inside and outside the meeting house. Church projects and activities are listed in the link, which comes out on email on Thursdays. And today we have some special remarks from Tracy Robinson from our social justice group. Yeah.
Morning, everybody. I'm grateful to be able to just share a few words. I will try not to go on too long. Those who know me know that's a challenge. Every day, 2 white vans pull up outside the Wollaston T station, and 5 to 10 families climb out. They are carrying all their earthly possessions in suitcases and shopping bags, and the parents are wondering whether they will get any supper and where their children will sleep tonight. Many are praying that they will not need to sleep on the ground outside the train station like they did last night, or 3 nights ago, or for the last 5 nights. 10 days ago, members of the First Parish Justice Committee were sucked into the storm that is the current migrant housing crisis in Boston. Several of us have joined a handful of other volunteers and spent evenings witnessing in Quincy. Witnessing being providing food, water, transportation, compassion, diapers, blankets, all for people who have nowhere to go. We are asking for your help. The committee last week got together and brainstormed a list of things that we can do with many questions about what is going on here, why is this happening, who is responsible, and the ever question, how can we fix this? These are all good questions, but perhaps the one most important one in this moment is what can we do right now to help these families, these parents and young children? We brainstormed a list. We can start gathering and donating supplies, blankets, toothpaste, luggage, all those things. There is a box back in the narthex. We'll probably move it to the carriage house since we won't have church in here the next few Sundays. Something, and we will keep posted in the link about where you can donate things. You can call the governor's office and say, I know that's a problem. I feel for you, Governor Healy, but this is not the way to do it. Participate in vigils at the State House, witness in Quincy, start to engage MICA, the Milton Interfaith Clergy Association, and how we might consider providing short-term housing amongst our churches in Milton. Ask all of you members to read the link every week because there will be news, probably weekly, ongoing. As Tony said, this is a marathon, not a sprint. I also encourage you to read the Globe. Almost every day there's an article on the front page about what's going on and the difficulties these people are encountering. So we've also started doing things. Mary Blanchette facilitated the email blast. I don't know if you saw it last week that listed a lot of the things that are useful. They're also on Tucker's box. Tucker set up the box in the narthex. At least 4 of us have spent at least one night in Quincy. Cynthia's been there, I think, a half a dozen nights. It is a challenging time, and I think that we can do something. I want to end with just one short little story. It's always good to tell a little story to kind of help it stick. As many of you know, Pat Gallivan, Cynthia, and I have been working with resettling a couple of families in Dorchester over the last 6 to 12 months. They are happily ensconced in their apartment and doing well. Cynthia had the brilliant idea last week to invite 2 of them to come with us to the witnessing. No pressure, just, come and hang out and see what we can do. Watching them as they talked with their fellow Haitians in their own language, laughing and talking and sharing stories and needs and wants, watching one of them in particular stand up in front of a group of 40 people and translate a leader volunteer who was telling them that at least half of them were going to have to sleep on the ground that night. Naomi was just amazing at just sort of, in her very little English that she is just learning, budding English, She would always ask the English speaker, to restate something that she didn't understand so she could translate it. But just watching her engage in this way, and you could just tell she loved every minute of it, just helping. And what it made me think was that we should never, ever doubt that small acts of generosity are incredibly powerful. Thank you for anything you can do.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm now going to light our chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Let it remind us of the warmth of our community and the hope that we share, that together we can make the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but also for others.
Okay. Please join me in the call to worship, which is text number 1 on a laminated card in your pew. Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together, we work to build a world with justice and compassion. Come, let us gather together.
Our reading today comes from the Reverend John Burens. You don't need to believe in the God of the Bible to understand its stories. You don't even need to believe that the Bible is consistent in its image of God. It isn't. Neither are we. At times, the Bible's images of God seem tragic, oppressive, punitive, cruel, or destructive. So are we. We violate our covenants with one another and with God, who both judges our failings and constantly offers what the Hebrew Bible has called chesed, steadfast, enduring love. Even if the Bible remains for us only great literature and not sacred scripture, we should try to approach it on its own terms, as literature trying to tell us of the human experience from a transcendent God's eye perspective, trying to remind human beings who had experienced both undeserved goodness and unmerited evil how to remain true to the transcendent source of creation, liberation, and ultimate justice.
So, there are 2 white lies in the extremely clickbaity title of this service, for which I apologize. The first is that I've listened to the whole Bible, and I haven't yet. But I am 2/3 of the way there, having invested somewhere north of 100 hours of my time in cars and on airplanes, while doing yoga and cooking dinner, listening to the Bible in a Year podcast hosted by the Catholic priest, Father Mike Schmitz. Reading the Bible is something I'd always wanted to do. Some of you may have grown up in religious traditions where reading the Bible or the Torah was a central part of your religious practice. And if you are one of these people, you know the Bible way better than I do. Growing up Catholic, we were not what is called people of the book. My experience of the Bible was curated with highlights from Scripture being shared, usually out of context, at weekly Mass. Only the greatest hits. It's kind of like getting into the Beatles, but only listening to the songs that make the top 10, It's fine, but can you really fully get the Beatles without sitting through Revolution 9 or the obligatory tune on every album from Ringo? I don't know that you can. So I'd always had this fascination with reading the Bible cover to cover, but my several previous attempts always ran aground pretty quickly amid the long and detailed genealogies filled with unpronounceable Hebrew names. But when I heard there was a Bible podcast, I thought, well, that sounds doable, right? Listening to the Bible as opposed to reading it has proven to be a really good idea for me, allowing me to zone out a bit during the genealogies, the censuses, the long lists of detailed rules, the occasional bit of health advice, and the times when God dictates the measurements of the curtains in the temple. Turns out he's kind of a micromanager. In between all that, though, is the story of humanity writ large, and particularly of God's chosen people. The Old Testament so far, as I've gotten, is a story of people's often difficult relationship with God, but also of geopolitical intrigue, personal and spiritual betrayal, interior design, ritual sacrifice, heroism, sex, lust, and violence, among other things. But mostly, it's a story of people being continually called back to be their best selves and failing over and over and over again. Even those humans in the Bible who are undeniably great heroes, people like David, slayer of Goliath and triumphant king of Israel, are no less prone to horrific misjudgments and actions that betray their core principles than we are. They let their pride, their hubris, their failure to listen, and their desire to find the easy way out take over, just like we do. The Old Testament is also a story of a God who is continually driven to distraction by his disrespectful, no-account children. The God of the Old Testament comes off as needy, quick-tempered, and angry as he tries everything he can think of to get his kids to do what he wants. As a fellow dad, I can relate. John Buren's former president of the UUA and author of the book Understanding the Bible, an introduction for skeptics, seekers, and religious liberals, writes, however, that, quote, "We should at least notice this about God in the Bible. God gets better. Seemingly arbitrary, unforgiving, judgmental, and even cruel at first, God grows up and mellows. Perhaps as we read, so should we." Listening to the Old Testament has given me a new appreciation for how radical Jesus' ministry must have seemed. Amid stifling bureaucracy and a welter of detailed and specific rules, Jesus came along and boiled it down to only two: love God with everything you've got, and love your neighbor as yourself. Or, as the Beatles might have put it, all you need is love. Not, of course, that Jesus didn't have his moments. In the Gospel of Mark, as Jesus prepares for his fateful entry into Jerusalem, Jesus spots a fig tree. Mark writes, "Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, 'May no one ever eat fruit from you again.'" There are spiritual interpretations of this event as a metaphor for real versus outwardly showy faith, but I prefer to take the story at face value. Jesus got hangry, got ticked off at a poor tree just minding its own business, doing what the Creator put it there to do, and short-temperedly cursed it. Like father, like son, I suppose. But that's what I've come to appreciate about the Bible. Far from a source of perfect wisdom, though there is wisdom in it, the Bible is a catalog of imperfections, both human and, though we're not really supposed to admit this, divine. If the Bible is a study in failure, though, it's often a sympathetic one in which people often do wrong because they don't know any better, or, more often, because they just can't keep their priorities straight. It's a story in which we and God are constantly called to respond to imperfection and even betrayal with love, always working toward reconciliation. Among the ways the people of Israel can't keep their priorities straight is that they put stock in the words of false prophets who tell them what they want to hear, or wander off and worship idols as false gods. There's this amazing passage in the book of the prophet Isaiah in which the prophet compares his God with the wooden idols that the Israelites constantly worshiped instead. The idols have neither knowledge nor reason. Their eyes are coated so that they cannot see, and their hearts so that they cannot understand. Referring to a maker of idols, Isaiah writes, "He is chasing ashes, a thing that cannot save itself when the flame consumes it, yet he does not say, 'Is not this thing in my right hand a fraud?'" If there is one thing that comes through over and over again in the Bible, it's that choosing the right thing to worship and worshiping it in the right way is one of the most important things there is. And while there's a divine component to that, it's also something that's relevant in a secular sense. A question of where we direct our attention and what we choose as the objects of our desire and praise. The author David Foster Wallace, in his famous commencement address to the graduates of Kenyon College, put it this way: "In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There's no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan mother goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some inviolable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive." Wallace continues, "If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you'll never have enough. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly." Wallace's message is that our modern culture gives us an infinite number of things we can choose to worship and infinite freedom to choose, granting us, as he says, the freedom to be lords of our tiny skull-sized kingdom alone at the center of all creation. The really important kind of freedom, Wallace writes, involves attention and awareness and discipline, and being able to truly care about other people and sacrifice for them over and over in petty, unsexy ways every day. And that also is part of the story of the Bible, of people and gods seeking to become better, to speak the truth, and to attend to what matters, often at great sacrifice. So, as to the second white lie in the title of this sermon, the clickbaity "so you don't have to." You don't, of course, have to read the Bible. We are Unitarians. You can derive your spiritual inspiration and information from whatever source you find to speak to your own conscience. And you definitely don't have to listen to a Catholic priest providing his interpretation of the Bible, though doing so has actually helped me understand my former religious tradition a little bit better. But I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't read the Bible or listen to it, because the very human failures and triumphs within the book are a living reminder that while our society has little in common with that of the Israelites living thousands of years ago, the job of trying to be a good human, of being right with God and the world and the universe, of focusing one's attention on the right things and choosing what we worship is not much different. The challenges are eternal. And maybe by reading about how humans in a very different time and place navigated those challenges, we can learn a little something that can help us to do so too. We'll now enter into a time of silence.
Today's offering is dedicated to the services and ministry of First Parish in Milton. To give, you can simply text the number that's printed on the card in your order of worship, and everything that can be given is appreciated for the works of this congregation. Please join me in the unison dedication, which is number 4 on the laminated card. May these gifts be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity. Please join me in singing our doxology, which is number 3 on the card. Which is number 1028 in the teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment.
Our benediction comes from Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Have a great week.